So the eye monster in Little Nightmares 2, the wall of eyes, the eye blob creature, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people are really confused as to what it is, what it represents, what it means, how it was formed, and so on. And so in today's video, I'm going to explain exactly what it is, what it means metaphorically in our world, but also what it means in the world of Little Nightmares, and how it was formed and so on. Now obviously there's going to be big spoilers in this video for Little Nightmares, for pretty much the whole franchise, so if you don't want spoilers, this is your one and only warning. And also this video is going to feed into my next video. In my next video, I'm going to talk about the ending, I'm going to explain the ending of Little Nightmares 2, and I'm going to give the best explanation for exactly why Six did what she did at the end. But to do that, I really need to talk about the eye monster first. So if you enjoy this video, consider subscribing and putting on the notification bell so when I upload the next video, you won't miss it. And I promise you, if you enjoy this one, you won't want to miss the next one. So what exactly is the eye monster? Well, it's this giant mass of eyes that we see inside the signal tower. It has no limbs, no body parts, no heads. It's just this big mass of flesh with eyes in it. And it can move. It seems to move like a wave, and it seems to chase Mono and Six, which means that it has some form of agency. It has something that it wants. It has some agenda, but it also has behavior, if you will. And it seems to only come alive once the music box has been destroyed and Six has reverted to her normal self. But it also seems to only come alive when Six and Mono try to leave the signal tower, and I'm going to explain that in just a little while. So this giant mass of eyes is kind of confusing, and it only really shows up for a short amount of time in the game, but it actually has been hinted at throughout the entire game. But a lot of people just won't connect the dots because, to be honest, the game doesn't do an amazing job at connecting those dots for you. But again, most of Little Nightmares is kept very mysterious and ambiguous for a reason, and I really love that reason. But you can very easily connect the dots if you look at the artwork. Now, the artwork in the game, the official artwork, was, as far as I'm aware, only available properly if you got the deluxe edition of the game, which means the majority of people won't get it. And even if you do get the deluxe edition of the game, most people aren't going to go through game files to find the artwork. So I feel like the majority of players just haven't seen the artwork, which is a shame because not only is the artwork really good, but it also fills in so many of the blanks of Little Nightmares 2. It explains a lot of things that just don't make sense otherwise, and it gives you a real insight into what the developers were trying to convey, because like I've said, with a lot of Little Nightmares things, the monsters are monsters, yes, but they're usually a metaphorical representation of something from our world, which is what makes them really scary. So in the case of the eye monster, we can actually see exactly what it is. And the eye monster, quite simply, is the missing citizens of the Pale City that we see their clothing. We see all these pairs of clothing lying around that look like somebody was there, but the person is missing and the clothing is left behind, which some people have said could be the Pretender. The Pretender in Very Little Nightmares had the ability to make people disappear, but their clothing were left behind. But the reason why I don't think it's the Pretender is because A, I think she died at the end of Very Little Nightmares. She didn't resurface after she dropped into the water. And B, we don't see the Pretender in the city. We don't see anybody with that kind of magic, because it could just be the same magic that the Pretender used, but not actually the Pretender. But we don't see anybody in the Pale City. The only person we see is the Thin Man, and only halfway through that area. So I don't think it's that. And if you look at the artwork, you can actually see a really good explanation of where these people have gone. Now in this first picture, you see one of the viewers and you can see her head being sucked into the TV. Now, this is riddled with metaphors, and it makes so much sense when you actually think about what the main theme of Little Nightmares 2 is. Now, the main theme of Little Nightmares 1 was the hunger and consumerism and people eating things or eating or consuming, being power hungry. All of those things, all those metaphors tied in really nicely together. Now in Little Nightmares 2, the theme is escapism. Now escapism, generally speaking, it's not like escaping, like actually escaping a place. It's more about wanting to get away from your life for a moment. Well, the reason why TV shows or video games are really popular is because it allows you to escape the real world for a bit, because the real world is full of stress. The real world can be really crappy sometimes. You know, even in a normal day, most people have to get up, they have to go to a work. Most people don't really love their job. You have to go to work, you have to do that, you come home, you have responsibilities, you have bills to pay. There's a lot of stress. And so to get away from that for an hour or two, or in my case, 12, people use things like video games or books or TV shows. And you can think about those in a way as taking you to another world. Say you log into Final Fantasy XIV, you are going into that world for however long you play. If you start reading Game of Thrones, you are going into that world while you read it. It's very simple, but that's what escapism is. Now, the viewers in Pale City are desperate for escapism, and it's probably because the city is just, well, it's pale, it's bleak, the color palette is very muted for a reason. It's a really lonely and sad place. You have all of these people living there, but nobody's really interacting. People are just constantly going to work, and then they come home, and the only comfort they have is their TV. And I think that this is the metaphor for Little Nightmares 2. The viewers are so desperate for escapism that they are literally being sucked into the TV. If you think about it, you could say that when you read a book and you read like 10 chapters and you're like, whoa, like I really got absorbed into that book for a while, because you almost leave your world for a little bit. It feels like you were in the book, and that's what's on display here. But to take it one step further, we can see that the viewers are actually being sucked into the television. And that explains why their faces are all twisted. But to go one step further, we can see that the piles of clothing left around are actually evidence that the viewers are fully sucked into the TV eventually. If you look at this picture, you see the pile of clothing right next to a television and the eye is in the television. So what that's hinting at is that that person was absorbed into the TV. Now, where do they go after this? Well, there is another image that we can look at, which is showing all of these TVs and people falling out of them into a pile of like a writhing mass along the floor. And that's exactly what's happening to the viewers. They are being so absorbed by these TV signals or these TV shows that they are being sucked into the TV and they are being taken into the signal tower. Now, we know that the signal tower has the ability to warp or transform people. We see it twice, so we know that it's possible. We see Six is taken to the signal tower and she's not there for very long, but she ends up becoming massive and her arms are all out of proportion and her legs and her feet are massive. Look at those feet. But we also see it with Mono too. Mono spends time in the signal tower and he starts to grow up. And it's possible that this is just time occurring and this is how Six and Mono were going to grow up anyway. But it's also very interesting that both of them get turned into some form of monster. So these viewers that are being pulled into the signal tower end up becoming this writhing mass of flesh. And it's possibly part of the signal's doing it to them, but it's leaving behind their basic emotions. It's leaving behind their basic characteristics. Six, when she's turned into a monster, she's still very reclusive and she's still very protective over her music box. Mono, similarly, he's quite a shy person. He's quite quiet. When he's taken into the signal tower and he grows up, he kind of retains his basic characteristics. And so the viewers, when they're turned into this giant flesh monster, they retain their one basic characteristic, which is they want to view the signal. That's why they chase Mono and Six at the end of Little Nightmares 2, because, and I'm going to explain this in detail in the next video, Mono is the signal. So while the viewers in the Pale City are so desperate to watch the TV signal that they will literally put themselves in danger, they will fall off a building or they will watch TV in a bathtub, which is very dangerous and you shouldn't do it. But while they are so desperate to watch a signal, inside the signal tower, they still want to do the same thing. They still want to watch the signal. And Mono, who is either the signal or carrying the signal, they want to watch him because that's what they do. They want to watch the signal, and just because they're in the signal tower doesn't mean that that has stopped. So that's exactly what the eye monster is. It's the missing viewers around the city all melded together by the corrupting influence of the signal tower. It's a very simple explanation, but the metaphorical one is pretty cool. And we could actually go one step further with the metaphor here as well. We could say, well, when you're very obsessed with watching TV shows or playing video games, your body starts to change. If we look at generations, if we look at our generations, we're becoming increasingly bigger. And again, that ties into the whole hunger aspect that we talked about in the previous video. But it also makes sense. If you're sitting down all day, you're not getting enough exercise. And I know this because this happens to me. When you sit down all day and you're watching TV shows or you're working in an office, you end up becoming unhealthy. And we could say that the viewers becoming this giant mass of flesh kind of mirrors how society, who is now spending way more time at home, way more time indoors, way more time sat on the couch or sat in bed, consuming media, you know, doing that escapism, our bodies are deteriorating too. Our bodies are becoming more squidgy. Let's be honest, we're becoming more squidgy. And I know this is true for me compared to my grandparents who didn't, you know, barely watched any TV or only watched for like an hour a day at most. They were much more fit and healthy than I am. So there's a lot of hidden metaphors with the eye monster, but the main takeaway is it is the viewers from the Pale City. They've been sucked in. They've been turned into this mass of flesh, and they still just want to do what they want to do. Notice how they don't eat Mono. They just surround him because all they want to do is watch the TV signal. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I say, in the next one, I'm going to explain exactly why 6 dropped Mono. I think I've pretty much nailed that one, but I'll talk about all of the theories around it and so on. If this is your first time here, I do explain, explore, and expand upon the darkest world in video games. Not just Little Nightmares, but there is quite a lot of Little Nightmares content on this channel, just because I love it that damn much. So do all the things, like the video if you liked it, let me know down in the comments below what you think, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.